Good morning. If you can't tell, I'm Ellen, and thank you so much for having me here today. Actually, you didn't invite me. You invited our Lieutenant Governor, Joe Garcia, but he couldn't be here, so I'm pinch hitting. And Joe isn't just our Lieutenant Governor, but he is also the head of our Colorado Department of Higher Education. So it's a pleasure to be here. I hope I represent him well. Chancellor, my big takeaway, I'm never complaining about my budget again. Ever. And Dr. Crow, you'll be happy to know that when I took over this position, I told my team two things. One, I never wanted to hear the word no. They could say yes, but not no. And the other thing I never wanted to hear, which was really hard for a state bureaucratic agency, was because that's the way we've always done it. So this morning, in addition to representing Joe and making some points I know he'd like to make, I'm also going to be offering a Colorado perspective on career pathways and talking a little bit on a broader level from my other role as president of the National Association of State Workforce Agencies, or NASWA. So yesterday, when I was struggling after our meetings and having a beer at the bar over what I wanted to say, one of my colleagues said to me, well, what do you want people to take away? And really, what I want you to take away, and what we've heard over and over again the last day and a half, but people need to hear about 7 times before it really sinks in, and is that we have a problem. We have a real problem in this country with our workforce, and especially with our youth. But one, hopefully, that we can solve. And now is the moment in time for us to do that if we're willing. But I want to be clear that it's not just about the youth, although that's the focus of our conference here. There are other targeted populations that we have to think about and we can't forget about. Populations like people living with disabilities, populations like the long-term unemployed, populations like veterans. These are all groups of people that are disconnected. And you can say disconnected, you can say disenfranchised, you can say disengaged. It's a problem. And I might add, a problem that we as society kind of created ourselves. 4.5 years ago when I took this job, I didn't know if workforce was one word or two. I didn't know. And now it's all I think about. And if someone 4.5 years ago had asked me about the talent pipeline, I would have thought it was a group of performing artists. Now I cite various reports, statistics, data, however you may define that. At NASWA, our focus is now moving from unemployment insurance and all of the associated issues with it to workforce development and the sharing of best practices and innovative ideas, including the implementation of the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act and how that can be used as a tool to address some of these issues. In Colorado, our focus and the #1 goal of the Lieutenant Governor is closing the attainment gap for Hispanics. It's also one of our greatest challenges, shared by all of our sister states here at the conference. In Colorado, only 19% of Hispanics over 25 have a 4-year degree, compared to 52% of non-Hispanic white adults. And yet, Hispanics are our fastest growing population. And by 2020, 74% of the jobs in Colorado will require some type of post-secondary education. We have got to face the reality of these statistics. And in addition to the attainment gap, we also have a skills gap. Jobs are going unfilled because employers can't find qualified applicants. In Colorado, the Adams County Workforce Center held a job fair with the construction industry several months ago. More than 30 employers, more than 100 jobs. 16 people showed up. 16 people. We have got to figure out how to fill these jobs. We are not going to meet our state or our national economy needs for a skilled workforce. And jobs that should stay onshore are going to go offshore, not because labor is cheaper, but because they have an educated workforce. And the skills gap has a tremendous impact on industries like healthcare, IT, manufacturing, and construction in many states. But some states are actually getting creative. Louisiana and Texas are looking at forming a regional partnership for the recruitment and training of people in the construction industry. But as we've heard, there's a strong focus on bachelor and higher degrees, and this has drawn critical attention away from the reality that good jobs may require alternate paths and different job training. In Colorado, only 23 out of 100 ninth graders will graduate high school, go directly to college, and graduate college on time within 4 years. 77 out of 100 will find an alternate path. Now, if you've heard that Colorado is ranked second in the nation for the number of people holding bachelor's degrees or higher, you might wonder how these statistics jive. Well, the truth is that Colorado is a great place to live, and lots of people move there. They move there with a job, they move there without a job. Most of them move there with some kind of degree. In fact, Colorado, for the past several years, has been the #1 destination for people aged 24 to 35-year-old. And that was before we actually legalized marijuana. I know we couldn't go through a whole conference without talking about that, right? So the big elephant in the room. But yeah, so 23 out of 100 finish on time, 77 don't. And yesterday people were telling their story. So just briefly, I was one of the 77. I graduated high school, I went to college, hated it, was bored, decided I was going to take an alternate path. Now, back then, vocational training for women meant clerical or secretarial school. And how I got from there to here is a really long story that we don't have time to talk about. But I will say at the time, I never realized that my skills, speed and agility on a manual typewriter, and for those of you under 30, you can Google what a manual typewriter is, would be transferable to speed, skill, and agility on a computer keyboard. Of course, back then there weren't computers, or cell phones, or cable TV, and Al Gore hadn't yet introduced the internet. So I ultimately finished, but it was some time later and actually 7 institutions of higher learning later. Now, my son, on the other hand, and I'm glad he never comes to these conferences, my son, on the other hand, was one of the 23. He finished high school, he went directly to college, and he graduated in 4 years with a 3.6 GPA and a degree in philosophy. Not a lot of work out there for philosophers, but lucky for him, his mother knew about workforce centers, and he has a job. But the truth is, I wanted him to be a plumber. And people would laugh at me, but being a plumber is a trade, and it requires an apprenticeship most of the time. But there's a cultural and a societal stigma that our country has against apprenticeships, vocational, and trade schools. His counselor in high school told him he was too smart to be a plumber. If he was a plumber, he would be earning twice what he's earning now and would probably have his own business. So as the president of NASWA, we're working, all of the states are coming together and working on how we identify solutions to some of these issues. In Colorado, our governor has set workforce development as one of his 5 top priority areas in making Colorado the healthiest state in the nation, because you cannot be a healthy state or a healthy person if you don't have a good job. We're collaborating at the cabinet, the agency, and the local level across agencies and with industry input and leadership. In fact, the governor recently created what we're calling a workforce cabinet, comprised of a multitude of agency leaders and their staff who all have common goals across the agencies that are posted on our websites and we are responsible for meeting. But industry input is truly at the core of our workforce development strategy. Developing public-private partnership models and sharing as best practices on a state and national level will help us close the skills and attainment gap. Our state's talent pipeline approach supports statewide alignment of agencies that connect workforce and education to business. And the two key strategies and one potential solution for building Colorado's talent pipeline are sector partnerships and career pathways. Sector partnerships are driven by industry at the regional level, along with partners from workforce education and economic development. No one group can do it on their own. Sector partnerships are a vehicle for alignment at that state and local level with industry. Colorado currently has over 20 active and emerging sector partnerships that are informing the development of career pathways at a regional level. So here's the takeaway. Get out your pens and pencils. You're going to want to write these 10 steps down, or you can do it on your mobile device, and we can all pretend you're not checking your email or your Facebook page. 10 key elements that are critical to scaling up public-private partnerships that we found in Colorado. First, there has to be a shared vision and goal. When Governor Hickenlooper first took office, he embarked on a trip around the state and developed the bottom-up economic development, or what we call the Colorado Blueprint. And it's a shared vision among all of the areas in Colorado, all of the regions in Colorado, about where we want to be and what we want to go, what we want to do. And sector strategies are a very explicit goal number 6, I believe, in the Colorado Blueprint. And when Montana elected their new governor in 2012, they actually met with us and then embarked on a similar project. Some other states have other similar initiatives, such as Tennessee's Drive to 55, to ensure that 55% of Tennesseans are equipped with a college degree or certificate by the year 2025. And yesterday I heard about Utah, and they have a plan 60 by 2020. Other states do have similar initiatives. So number 1, shared vision. Number 2, leverage industry data and tools. So the state can play a strong role in sorting through the multiple sources and layers of data that's out there, organizing the data into usable tools for local areas to make informed decisions about targeted industries for sector partnerships. Use your Office of Labor Market Information. Additionally, cross-agency data and strategy teams developed criteria, and when I say cross-agencies, this is agencies working together to come up with criteria to define the top jobs in the state of Colorado. And we used it as a foundation for our first annual talent pipeline. Number 3, create a common dashboard for success criteria. Creating a common dashboard of success indicators, a set of criteria for high-performing partnerships, guides the development of these partnerships and provides the state with aggregate common key performance metrics. And through the National Governors Association Policy Academy, Colorado's learning best practices and sharing best practices from states like New Jersey, who have already developed metrics for industry partnerships. Number 4, focus on training and capacity building. In Colorado, we focused on providing coaching and building the capacity of local partners to implement sector partnerships and create comprehensive pathways. Number 5, build the buzz. Build the buzz about the value of industry-led career pathways. Number 6, review administrative policy. See what barriers are in place to keep this from happening. This is critical. And when you can, change those barriers. Number 7, support legislative policy. This includes funding for partnerships, but can also include anything from codifying partnerships as a vehicle for cross-system collaboration. Colorado has had several pieces of legislation in the last few years that align sector partnerships, but in particular, this last session that just ended in May, there were more than 36 bills introduced that had an impact on the workforce and the workforce work in Colorado. 36 pieces of legislation introduced. Now, the good news was that the legislature also formed a bipartisan workforce caucus. Who would have thought 4 years ago? And out of that bipartisan workforce caucus actually came a package the workforce package of 10 bipartisan bills, 8 of which passed. So we're really looking at how we use legislation to help better inform and better move our workforce development programs. And in addition to legislation, there's also the power of the pulpit of the governor. And next week in Colorado, the governor is going to announce, by executive order, the creation of the Business Experiential Learning Commission, which will be chaired by Noel Ginsberg, the CEO of Intertech Plastics, who's actually here today with us in the Colorado delegation. All of this leads to number 8, support funding and investments. Colorado's working with a team of national experts on braiding funding streams and breaking down barriers to collaboration that are caused because people are afraid to lose their funding. We can't not work together because we're competing for the same dollars. We have got to put that aside. Number 9, share promising practices. Needs no explanation. And number 10, last but not least, promote state-regional communication. Talk to each other. Create feedback loops. We're using our regional sector partnerships and our statewide trade associations to better align the conversation around industry needs and leadership. We're utilizing strong partnerships between state-level partners and their local system partners so that people are talking to one another. Now, I know those 10 things seem simple, and the truth is, it's not rocket science. But it does take time, it takes resources, it takes commitment, and it takes buy-in, all of which is sometimes actually harder than rocket science. To be successful, states have to focus on what matters most and leverage everything available towards accomplishing that. Because, as we all know, what gets measured gets done, what's funded gets done first, and it's critical that we both measure and fund what matters. And this work really matters. Thank you.